Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 83. Today I had a meeting with the little group of us who are dedicated to bringing International Nature Journaling Week to life each year, and I'm excited that the themes and the plans are coming together now. Some people have been asking me whether it will go ahead again this year, and yes, as always, it will be held from the 1st to the 7th of June, and this year we want to focus on getting back to basics, simplifying, finding nature all around us, wherever we are in the world, and remembering to celebrate this beautiful practice that has the potential to enrich our lives in so many different ways and foster connections between people and the natural world. If you aren't already subscribed, you can sign up to the International Nature Journaling Week mailing list through the website, which is naturejournalingweek.com. because it's through this email list that all the news and updates for the week are delivered. I'm very excited about what's to come this year. So now, today's guest is someone who I have known online for several years and whose work is an inspiration to so many nature journalists across the world. I'm speaking with Angela Hennessy, who creates under the name Raspberry Thief and is very well known for her observations of the seasons around her. Angela has started a year-long nature journal challenge called Season Sketches, where she's using the Celtic Wheel of the Year as a guide and invites us to go outside on specific significant dates during the year to observe nature and notice what each new season brings. During our conversation, Angela talks about season sketches and why the seasons are such an important theme in her nature journal practice. Let's listen. Thank you so much, Angela, for joining me for the podcast today.
It's lovely being here. Thank you for inviting me. Sorry it's taken so long to sort out.
No, that happens, and it's a joy to have you here, and I can't wait to find out more about your story. And the place that I always start in my podcast is nature in my guests' early years, and I wonder if nature has been part of your life since the beginning.
I think it has, but I didn't realise. For the first sort of 10 years of my life, I grew up in a city, but when I look back, some of my memorable moments are actually my mum grew flowers in the garden, and I remember sitting in the garden and looking at insects. We had like these little red spider mites, and we'd just sit on the concrete in summer and we'd watch these little sort of red spider mites run up and down the pavement. And one of my main memories of sort of being a primary school kid was pelting down rain outside and sat on the sofa and just watching the rain track down the window, just watching the raindrops sort of drip down. And then when I was about 11, we sort of started to move out to more rural areas. We moved to a little village outside the city, and then after that my parents moved to East Yorkshire, so in a completely rural area where we had no buses, no street lights, no shops in the village where we lived. So I guess yes, but at the time I didn't think consciously of it. It was just part of my growing up.
And how about creativity and art? Have you always loved being creative?
Yes, and again that comes from my parents. My mum always grew plants, and my mum sewed, and we always had a craft activity going on. So she did sewing, rug making, all kinds of different things. It was just always, and my extended family as well. My dad's sisters, my gran knit, and so there was always that kind of going on. But drawing, not my family, not so much so. But I do remember I had a big atlas of wild animals that used to be my mum's. It was a huge, great big book. It was probably A2 size, great big atlas. and I'd open that and I'd find Africa, and I would copy all the sort of elephants and animals from each
Wow.
continent. Yeah, and I don't know what happened to that book. I must try and find a copy. But then I've always sort of doodled and drawn, but I'm not say I was. I wouldn't say I was sort of art. I wasn't creating amazing drawings. They were kind of just doodles and colorings and things like that. So, yeah.
Tell me the story of how you came to this place where you are living as a professional artist and creating every day, and what was the career trajectory that led you here?
So it began when my children were born. Really, that children take up a lot of time, and I needed
Mm.
something for myself. So I began knitting and doing other sort of creative pursuits. When my eldest daughter was little, I made baby slings. So I was sewing, and I had a business sewing actually for a little while. Um,
Mhm.
but it was actually when my youngest daughter Fern started nursery, I started running, so I was outside more. And as a family, we started spending more time outside. She was about 5 years old, and I decided I wanted to get back into drawing. And my husband, who's also an artist, he helped me with that pursuit. And I think it was probably at that same time that I found moment sketches on Instagram.
Yes.
So you were also part of that. Uh,
Yes. Do you wanna say a little about it, because for the listener who might not know?
Yeah, Moment Sketches was started by Candice Rose Rawdon, who lives in Uruguay. But Candice is just a wonderful artist who's travelled the world and seen some amazing places. And she's really good at creating a story and using her artwork to create a story. So she began Moment Sketches, which was about stopping at that moment in time, and it was designed for everybody to stop on a particular weekend. I think it was once every month. So the first weekend of every month, everybody stopped, went outside, not always outside, and sketched a particular sort of moment in time, and then shared it on Instagram. And it was just such a lovely community of people who were so
Mm.
supportive, because there was such a varied group of beginners, professionals. It was just a really lovely community, and obviously that inspired me to start season sketches as well. So
Yes. Yes. So we will definitely talk about season sketches, and I would first love to talk about how you came to nature journaling, how that started to be the focus of your work.
I think that probably started at a similar time. So as a family, we were spending more time outside. I was running. I'd found the Moment Sketches community. And then I think I came across the 100-day project.
Mhm.
Um, so for my 100-day project, I thought, right, I was running nearly every day, or I was outside nearly every day. I thought, right, I'll do 100 found objects. And of course, I didn't think that one through, because I think the first day I found like a piece of plastic on my run. I don't know, it was like some funny toy that. The second day it was like I think it was a cyclist glove. I thought, I can't do this for 100 days. um, but then I thought, actually, these things that I'm already noticing that while I've been running, that I'd not thought about, like, oh look, the daffodils are popping up, or the trees are starting to get leaves on. So I think by day 3 I'd started drawing the birds and the trees, and so gradually over that 100 days I'd become a nature journalist. And I'd never even heard of nature journaling at that point. So I don't know if it was by the end of the 100 days that I'd actually found nature journaling, or whether it was a little bit after that. So it might have been a year or so
Wow.
after, actually. So I'd never heard of John Muir Laws, and all those sort of amazing people in the community. Yeah, so it was just sort of a natural process of being outside and connecting those two things together, really,
Yeah.
and with the
Wow.
support of the Moment Sketches. So.
Yes. And when you talked about found objects, it just well, one of the first things I saw and knew of you was pocket hitchhikers.
Ah, yes.
I would love for you to talk about pocket hitchhikers and what that means.
I suppose that probably came out of the 100-day project as well. So instead of picking up, the detritus of human beings, I started picking up just pine cones and um, things like that. So pocket hitchhikers, it wasn't actually a term coined by me. It was by another Instagrammer, and she allowed me to use the terminology. I think she'd picked up some sea glass and she'd called it pocket hitchhikers. I just thought, what a beautiful term.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it's all those things that I collected when I was out running or walking, like bits of twigs, lichen, pine cones, anything like that. I'd stick in my running pouch or in my pockets, and when I got home, I'd sit down and sketch them. So it was just a nice way of, connecting those two things of being outside and drawing.
Yeah. Tell me a little, give me a little description of nature where you live. Can you describe what you see when you go out for a run?
Yeah, we live in a very suburban area, so we're close to the city of Leeds, and there's a little bit of green belt, and then we have our suburban town. It's a very sort of closed off little town, but we're really really lucky to have. It's called the Lines Way, so it's an old railway line that would have transported coal. We live in an old coal mining area, so it would have transported coal from the pit to certain areas. So it's a real lifeline for lots of people who live here. It's full of dog walkers, cyclists,
Mm.
runners. So and it also connects us to a local nature reserve, a local wetlands, which was also an old open cast mine. So it's all these areas that would have been really industrial
Mm.
probably 50, 100 years ago, and that are now totally have been taken back by nature. So I do feel very lucky that we have access to nature so easily.
Yeah. Isn't it special when, we as humans like put these things onto the landscape, mines or whatever it is, industrial um things, and then nature just gently reclaims them. I
Yeah.
just think that's really beautiful and powerful.
Well, I think part of the deal with the coal mine was that when it was finished, that they would return it back to nature. So, and
Okay.
it's been taken over by the RSPB now, and I volunteered there for quite a few years, which was really interesting. Which was a
Wow.
which was another thing that sort of helped spark me wanting to learn more. Working with such knowledgeable people was really, it was wonderful. So they helped me want to find out, everything. What's this flower? What's that bird?
Yeah. And you create under the name Raspberry Thief, and I love this name, and I wonder if there's a special story behind this name.
There is. When we've been in our house about 16 years now. I think my daughter was about 18 months, and we've inherited a beautiful old Bramley apple tree and a patch of raspberries. My daughter was probably about 18 months. It was probably maybe the first summer that we'd lived here. She'd come in from outside. She'd been playing outside, and her face was just totally smooshed with raspberries. And we was like, what have you been doing? Where have you been? And she just looked and gave us like a look of like, not been doing anything. And from that moment, we just coined her the Raspberry Thief. So I don't know if you know of the William Morris. There's a William Morris print called the Strawberry Thief, which is
No, I don't know
I
it.
think it's a song thrush. It's a print of a song thrush with strawberries. So that's where it kind of came from. I suppose it was just a nod to being. She was just so in the moment and enjoying those raspberries. So,
Yes. How lovely that that little interaction has come with you in your artistic career there. That
yeah, it
story, I
is.
love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I suppose it was just. She was just so in the moment and enjoying those raspberries. Yeah, it's a nice memory.
That's so sweet. And I'm wondering about the process of creating a nature journal page for you. Do you sketch outside or do you get your inspiration from your outdoor experiences and then come back indoors and make your page?
It's a mixture of all those things. I have since doing the moment sketches, I've always had an outdoor sketchbook, and I do whenever we go out somewhere, I always take my sketchbook with me. And I was doing that with running as well. Obviously, I've had to stop doing that in recent years because you can't really, we weren't able to stop for very long. But I'd like to get back into doing that again, and hopefully with the dog. I'm hoping that the dog will be can come with me.
Is the dog a new member of the family?
He's only 6 months old, so we need to train him to be sketch friendly. Yeah, so I have outdoor sketchbooks that I take with me, and then I also take lots and lots of photographs because I think it's better using your own material. And sometimes I'll bring leaves and things in, but I think I did that a lot to start with, but I've tried to stop doing that now because I think they're best left, in the place they're meant to be, not on my windowsill.
Yeah, I've been conflicted about that too. I love bringing pocket hitchhikers and nature treasures indoors with me, and at the same time, I do feel that same thing, that they're best left. So I think of it like a library. So like I'm borrowing something from nature for a little while, and I always return it as I would a library book, and that's how I've come to be at ease with that process. But I do understand that sort of inner conflict.
And I suppose I think if everybody takes a pebble off the beach, or there's that kind of thing that if a million people go on the beach, that's a million pebbles, isn't it? So so I do try and not. Our house is full of pine cones and sticks and seeds because the girls always collect. They've always got pockets full of stones and things if we've been to the beach, but we do try and bring as little as possible, and only the really special things.
Well, that leads me to one of my other questions, which was that I know that that you like to tread lightly on the earth, that you make eco-conscious decisions, and that's important to you. And I'm wondering about your thoughts on this connection between knowing nature through a nature journal and stewardship. There's a bit of talk in the nature journal community about fostering stewardship through nature journaling, and I wonder about your thoughts on that. Do you think that there's a link, and do you think that we can help people be more pro-environmental by encouraging them to connect with nature through a nature journal?
I definitely think so, particularly sort of in an urban area where I live. If you've got a few people who are noticing and recognizing certain plants or trees, particularly, we had an issue in this country of I think it was in Sheffield, where a council came and were going to chop down a load of trees. If you've got people who are nature journaling and making a record of those trees, then I do think that it's just a way of fostering people to care and connect. And if you care and connect and you've got a community around that connection as well, then definitely. I'm doing a workshop actually locally with a group of allotment holders, and I think some of those are involved in greening in our area, and some other sort of environmentally friendly groups. So I'm hoping that that will sort of lead on to similar things with them, that if we've got, I don't know, 10 people in our town that know there's a certain tree near them, that they can make sure that tree's not knocked down, and make sure it's protected. So yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know if there are downsides to that. I'm not sure.
Downsides to knowing. What would the downsides be?
I don't know. I just wonder whether I always like to look at both sides of stories, I suppose.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if there are any downsides to that. It just makes me wonder, would there be any downsides to it? But I don't think not, because community is really powerful,
Yeah. Tell me about finding community online, because like you said, there was the moment sketches and just the beautiful community that's on Instagram and other places, and I'd love to hear about that, about finding community among people who love what you love.
Yeah, I think it's hard sometimes when you're parent, a mum,
Yes.
I've been a work from home mum for a long time, and it is difficult, particularly when you've got, not the standard interests, I suppose, but everybody's got different interests. Yeah, it was wonderful finding community on Instagram, and I found, there are lots of downsides to the internet, and people are always talking about the bad things about it, but I've seen nothing but positivity from the people that
Mm.
I've chosen to follow and connect with. I think it's a choice. As you can
Where you
choose
put
to
your
watch,
attention.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, and try and weed out all the stuff that's not good for you. So
Yeah, I think it has to be really intentional, and if it is, it can be really positive. And there is also all that other stuff if you get if you get too deep in the wrong
yeah,
places.
yeah. Well, I think I've always tried to be a positive person and sort of have
Yeah.
and always try and find the good in things. So I think I seek out those things
Mm,
rather than the
mm.
negative.
I've been playing around recently with a new thing for me, which is making and using natural inks. And I
Oh yeah,
read that you have done this and that you've experimented with making brushes and pens and this sort of thing. I'd love to hear you talk about your experience with natural materials and how you've used them.
yeah. It was probably about 3 years ago. This was again. It was inspired by one of my youngest daughter. Was it before the pandemic? I think it was. I did a project on trees for Inktober. And I chose 13 of our native trees, and I sketched them. And again, connected to the apple tree outside. My When we were at the beginning of the pandemic, me and my daughter every Friday we sort of drew this branch on the our apple tree, just as a way of getting outside and having I suppose, a break to end the week. So
Mm.
it was around that time that we'd started making pens out of the trees, because in Celtic mythology there's something called the ogham, and it's like an alphabet of the trees, and each tree has a letter. And um, in Celtic mythology, you can take sort of a twig from the tree and make a talisman out of the piece of wood. So we kind of did that, but made
Yeah.
a dip pen from each tree. So we've got quite a nice collection now of these pens with the ogham symbol on. So there's like a specific symbol for each type of tree. And in the Celtic mythology, each tree has kind of like a signature or a presence. So that could be like willow trees. You can imagine it's to do with growth and renewal. So so that's partly what sort of inspired making the inks as well. So again, going back to pocket hitchhikers, I had a whole load of acorns and oak galls that we'd collected. So the year after we'd collected those, I think it was just the autumn just gone, we made a load of oak gall ink out of those, and it turned out really well. So yeah, and it's just
Wow.
something really nice about using a natural product made from the tree and then using a pen made from the tree to draw the tree. So it's kind of
Yeah.
on honoring the tree. So
Yeah, that's really moving and connective.
yeah.
Connective. I don't know if that's a word, but uh, yeah, just that the materials that you're using are so natural that you've made them, that they're local to your
Yeah.
place. Yeah, beautiful.
I read, I don't know if you've read the book by Robin Wall Kimmerer, Braiding Sweetgrass. I think
Yes, yes.
that book totally sort of changed the way I look at the things around me. She talks about reciprocity with the
Yes.
things that we eat and use in nature, and her culture. It's not just taking from
Mm.
nature. We are part of nature, and that also means giving back as well. So I don't know, by using the natural inks and the natural pen, it just feels like we have a better, almost saying thank you to the tree. I know that
Yeah.
sounds a bit sort of funny, but saying thank you to the tree for being there, for 'cause some of these trees have been there for hundreds of years. So yeah, so
Yeah.
we plan to try and make a pen and some ink from each of those trees that are in our local area. So be a long project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way that you have this sort of family routine of deliberately going outdoors, deliberately making time to hike and um, go to the dales and to do all these things as a family in nature. I love that you've got that routine.
Yeah, that's something I think quite a while ago we kind of got stuck in a rut where the days seem to meld into one and the weekends all seem to meld into one, and there seems to be no pauses. um, so we started making sure we'd do a hike sort of once a month. So at least once per month we had something that we could kind of look back on and remember, that wasn't to do with
Mm.
all the other things in family life that are crazy, and that we were all together. Yeah, and it's something we've tried to keep doing for quite a few years now. So yeah, it's a nice thing to do. We don't, not always all five of us, but most
Yeah.
of the time.
But those memories, I mean, I always ask about early memories of nature just because just as a way of sort of getting to know my guest and know their history but I really do think that something about those early experiences, even if they're subconscious in the way that they
Yeah,
were for you, like you're gathering a connection. And any time that we spend outside, we're fortifying that connection or making it stronger. And that's what you're laying down in the hearts and minds of your daughters is just
hopefully.
these. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah, all
think
these memories.
even if they, I don't know, become a lawyer and work in the city for however many years, I'm sure at some point they will go back, the same as I made that connection. And I'm not sure mum and dad realise the
Mm.
part they played in that. But I well, I'll send this to my mum and she can listen.
Yeah.
My mum always knew the names of the trees and always, that. So I think it is definitely an unconscious thing, because my husband always says, "How do you know the name of that?" And I was like, "I don't know. It's just my mum. My mum told me." So
Wow. I love that. That's really special. Hi, Angela's mum. So I'm so interested to see that one really sort of major arc in your work is the seasons, and I wonder about that. What it is about the seasons for you that is such a draw, such a focus.
again, it goes back to trying to be in the moment and making the most of the time right now, whether it's
Mm-mm.
winter or particularly winter. Again, I remember thinking, God, I can't wait for January to be over, or I can't wait for February to be over. But now
Yeah.
I really love January and February. It's a time
Mm.
for quiet and rest and noticing that although we think things are asleep, they're really not. They're just there waiting to sort of burst forth. So I think, yeah, the seasons right from the beginning have been really important to me. Um, I suppose because running as well, I was running, not just in the summer. In fact, my favourite running season sort of September till February, because it's cooler. So that made me appreciate the weather and realise it's just rain. It's obviously there are different degrees of rain, but here really we don't really get too bad weather that you can't go out in it.
I love that explanation because, yeah, it is about being present and with what's happening right now, not projecting into the next month or the
Yeah.
month after that, but just being with nature right now. And one thing that I loved looking at in your work is your first signs project and that idea because here, I mean, we do have first signs, but you have to tune in um,
Yeah.
very closely to them because our seasons are less distinct. But this this idea of like, yeah, this is the first time this happens or this happens, this happens. What does that feel like for you?
Um, I think it's actually changed since I first started doing it. I realised this year, because In January, I did a lot of work on hazel catkins, um, and some other plants. And I realised when I first started, I was looking for the flowers. So say lesser celandine, which has just started flowering here now. When I first started doing the first signs, I was looking for the flower, but now I'm actually looking for the leaves.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know if, I suppose because I know the patches where those things grow now, I'm more in tune to. It's
Yeah.
made an even deeper connection, really, and I suppose it's drawn me further back into January. Like, gosh, now I can see that plant. It doesn't just appear in February. It's actually doing something in January, and it's already starting to grow and develop. I don't know if that answers
Yeah.
that question.
Yeah, that's totally beautiful that it's making your awareness even more sharpened by the sound of it.
Yes,
Yeah, that's really special. So you have these prints that you create that are first signs of spring, first signs of summer, and I just think that's very, very beautiful, um, to tune into those and to help others see that as well.
yeah, yeah. I think it has. I know it's only a piece of artwork, but I have had lots of sort of messages off people just saying that people buy these in December and January because I think it does help people
Yeah.
tune into the moment and look forward to things. I suppose look forward to what's coming around the corner before it arrives. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really special. So towards the end of last year, you launched a nature journaling challenge. You mentioned it before. I'd love to talk about it now, Season Sketches. Let's talk about what it is and how people can get involved.
Season sketches is a nature outdoor nature challenge, and it's based around the Celtic Wheel of the Year. So the Celts had eight celebrations over the year. So I just thought these were eight perfect pauses across the year to have an art challenge. So it's not quite as full on as once a month.
Yes.
Every couple of months is just doable for most people. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, so we're in our, I think we're coming up to our fourth challenge this year. So we're halfway through the Wheel of the Year. So
Mhm.
it's the Wheel of the Year starts in Samhain, which is in October. So we start in the dark half of the year. So we go from the autumn equinox to the spring equinox, and then from the spring to the back to the autumn equinox. So at the moment in the UK, we're coming towards Ostara, which is the start of the lighter time of the year. And for you, you'll be going into autumn and winter. So
Yes, we're opposite. Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
So every one of those celebrations for that weekend, we go outside, and for instance, the last one, which was Imolc, we were looking for first signs of spring here in the UK, and basically we'll be going into winter in the southern hemisphere. But yeah, it's been really really lovely and a really nice way to connect with people. The last one in particular, I think spring's always so emotive for people,
Yes.
and some people just went all in, crazy, creative, but there are a lot of people who just really enjoyed just stopping and pausing,
Mm.
and I think in some ways that was more important than the sketching. Really, the fact that they took 10 minutes time out, for themselves from their day to just sit and you know look at some snowdrops or something. It was yeah, it's really special. So, and I really love finding out about other places in the world.
Yes.
That's really where I get excited about. There's a lady in Tasmania who has been focusing on indigenous plants, so plants that she'd not really noticed before or taken much interest in. Now she's finding out that there's a certain type of grass, and she's found out that it's really fire resistant, and that
Mm.
it was farmed and would have been used by indigenous people as food. So these things, again going back to the Robin Wall Kimmerer book, these things are really important, because if you don't know what they are, then we might need those plants one day again. You never know, do you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful that you're bringing people together at these certain points of the year to reflect and to share and, yeah, seeing others. It is like moment sketches because you're seeing one point in their
Yeah.
season, but it's nature related and it's very special. I wonder if you've had or if you've always been sort of connected to this Celtic, traditional ideas, or if it's something that you're coming to through this process?
It's I suppose I've always been interested in that kind of thing from being a young girl. I'm not religious, and I wasn't brought up religious, so I never. Although we celebrate Christmas and Easter, I suppose I never really felt um, a proper connection to those things. And over the years, I
Mm.
became aware of the calendar, um, and then around the similar time of us going out walking with the children on the winter solstice, which is I think it's about the 20th, 21st of December. We It was before we started doing the monthly walks. Actually, we started going out on the winter solstice, going for a walk and watching the sunset. It's kind of a pause before all the craziness of Christmas. So I think it was just a gradual thing from there, and then slowly the children have got more interested in it. And last year, that's I guess the pandemic sort of helped with that. It just seemed like really nice to have those celebrations. So last year we started learning about each celebration a bit more. So I am new to all, all the ins and outs of it, and it's something we're learning as we go along. But I think the nice thing about it is you there's no formula, there's no set way of doing it. You just do what's right for you, and you can
Mhm.
go join an organization if that's what appeals to you, or you can just do the things that appeal to you. So that really that that's I think that's why I find it interesting.
Mm. And for people who want to go more deeply into all these things, seasonal connections, the wheel of the year, you've created a membership site, and I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, it's quite new. I was hoping to start that when I started the season sketches, but that didn't work out. So I think I'd started it in December. So we're quite a new group. We're a small little group at the moment. But yeah, we're again the lady who found the plants in Tasmania. She's a member.
Mhm.
The idea is sort of using the wheel even more and using nature journaling with that. So, for instance, this lady's now looking at her native plants and using those in her nature journal to using those plants that she finds to inform a nature journal and learn more about it. Us as a family for the coming Ostara, my youngest daughter again, she's really interested in medicinal plants. So she started last year when we were in the garden. She was looking at all the plants and seeing what the plants could do for you. So we found cleavers, which I don't know if you have them. They're like sticky buds. They're like a sticky plant, but you can use those
Mm.
for detoxing. So it's using our nature journals to sort of document the plants that come at that time of year, but finding out more about the plants. So a little bit like using the natural materials to draw with, but
Yes,
finding out the medicinal properties of a plant, or are the plants edible? Yeah, so
that's wonderful.
it's a process. I think we're finding our feet over on Patreon, and I think I'm really happy for it to grow organically with the group of people and sort of grow slowly. So
Yeah, and with a group like that, there's lots of, interaction with each person and growth together, and that's really special. One of the things that I love, love, love about your work is these concertina books that you
oh yeah,
create. And you have, again, it's the seasonal thing, and you put them together and they stretch out, and you can see the whole year in nature journal form. How did you come to this practice of turning these into concertina books?
I think that the first year that I did the nature journaling, before I knew it was nature journaling, I just did it on blank sheets of paper, and so the following year I thought I want to carry this on again, and I was looking for a way of presenting that, and I just happened to have a moleskin. I think it's a Japanese moleskin on my shelf that I bought probably a few years before, and had kept waiting for this perfect project or perfect thing to arrive. Yeah, and so I just thought, oh, that'll work really well. So it was just chance, really, that that happened. And actually, I filled the book up before the end of the year, and a lovely friend on Instagram actually provided me with some paper to finish it that was of a similar quality, because I'd used the book up about 2 months before the end of the year. But it was awful paper. It was not quality watercolor quality at all. So the following year, I thought, right, I'm going to make my own out of watercolor paper. So that's what I've done ever since. So I use a big sheet of, I think it's A3 watercolor paper, and then I chop that up and make the books. So unfortunately, the last 2 years I didn't actually finish either 2020 or 21 the books, but it is what it is, isn't it? But I've started again this year, so
this time in history, like whatever you get done is like a major achievement in my view at this point in time. But so you make these journals, I mean, you keep these journals for you, but then you've actually published them or created copies that people can buy.
Yeah, that was
and I hear that the response to them is pretty
it was
special.
quite moving, really. It's something, creating a book for yourself, that I made it for myself. There was no I didn't intend anybody to see it. It's to see my books. But it was through the community on Instagram that people like, I'd love that. I'd love to buy that. So that pushed me, actually. I tried to look into having it published or even having it made myself, but the concertina, it's really, it's a lot of sort of printers were just like, no, it's too expensive. So it actually pushed me to learn how to bookbind myself. So I ended up making the first book. I don't know how many copies I've made of that. I've sold quite a lot of them, really. So it was quite a funny process of letting this thing that's your own out into the world. But particularly over the pandemic, I had quite a few comments from people just to say this has really, really, really helped me get through. So it was, I've been in tears from a few of the messages that I've had that are really special.
That connection with nature seems to have grown, or the need for this connection seems to have grown. Have you noticed that through the pandemic, that more and more people are coming to it?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good thing, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, but there's something sort of intrinsic when things are a bit wobbly as they are at the moment. We need the solidity of coming back to what's innate, what's part of us. I wonder what you've been investigating in your journal lately as you come into spring.
Well, I say in January it was all. I just seemed to be interested in hazel catkins. That was, I think, the whole of January was hazel catkins. And we even tried them in tea, actually, which I didn't realise. So the Celts, and way back, they actually ate the catkins. They're full of protein. They don't taste particularly nice, but so that would have been, pretty special. Like, you've gone all winter and your food stores are depleted, and there's these beautiful yellow, dangly catkins. So that was January. February just has flown by. So it's all, at the minute, we've got wild garlic coming up. So I'm really looking forward to picking the wild garlic and making pesto out of that. That'll be really good. And the bluebells are starting to come up as well. That's a really special time of year for, in the woods, because along with the bluebells we get the great spotted woodpecker drumming on the trees as well. So yeah, that'll be
Wow.
very cool.
All these connections between yourself, others in the community, with nature, with history and culture. It's very moving and beautiful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me on the podcast today. Thank you, Angela.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. It's been lovely chatting.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Angela. I laughed when she talked about training her new dog to be sketch friendly. Yes, we have to find ways to let our everyday life and routine and our need to be out in nature be compatible. Sometimes this means finding small windows of time in between parenting or work or other commitments. And sometimes this means stopping along the trail when you're walking the dog. Whatever you can do to allow time for nature is good, even if it's just one small moment in your day. I love Angela's focus on the folklore and stories with the Celtic Wheel of the Year, as well as ways she talked about honouring nature and connection and reciprocity with the natural world. To learn more about Angela's work and get involved with the Season Sketches Nature Journal Challenge, visit the show notes for this episode where you'll find links to Angela's website and social media. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.